Good afternoon. Welcome to the podcast. An audience with a Pope. Anyway, it's been a while since I've done this, so I was waiting for the right opportunity, the right person, and I found him. His name is Bobby Kahn. He is a friend, a very dear friend, who
Thank you.
started our relationship by him being a client of mine. He is in Nevada right now. I'm here in Newark, New Jersey. I want you to welcome Bobby Kahn.
Hey, Anthony, thanks for having me. And you know what? Thanks for calling me your friend. And like I said, you're a lifetime friend. I owe you a lot.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate the trust that you had put into, in my hands, and the result was good, and things are great. So I want to
Well,
talk about your life a little bit, because it's very interesting. Folks, I got to tell you, when we started our relationship, Mr. Khan had been charged with a federal indictment in New Jersey, in federal court. It was a white collar matter. He came to me for representation. And I guess after about a year and a half of working diligently, both of us together and working with the government, we came upon what we thought was a favorable resolution. Bobby accepted responsibility just for what he did, nothing more. And he actually had to do a little bit of time in jail. A lot less than the government originally wanted, but it was a little bit of time in jail.
yeah.
And that learning experience is something that, unless you've done it, I live vicariously through my clients. I mean, most of my clients don't have to go to jail. Sometimes it happens, it depends on the circumstances. But I live vicarious through what they go through, the pain, the anguish of it, the waking up with it every morning, going to bed with it every night. But certainly I can't understand it or realize it as much as Bobby did himself. But the interesting is, Bobby's been out of jail. He is relocated to Las Vegas, Nevada, and he is now running for Congress on the Republican ticket. So to think that someone who several years ago was incarcerated and in a camp, a federal camp, but was incarcerated and now is back with his family, reunited, and has got the support of many, many people in District 1 in Las Vegas. In 2026, he is going to be running for Congress of the United States. I think that's a hell of a story, Bobby.
You
That
know
you
what?
came
It's
a
a
long way.
crazy.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Before I say anything, I always say to Anthony, I joke with him. I said, I got hope in Pope. When I met him, the first time we met, I was obviously locked up in county jail, and he came to meet me about 45 minutes after my wife left his office. And I met the man, and I said, "That's the lawyer. That's the guy I want to represent me." And from that day, I used to always joke with him, no matter how bad things got. I said, "I've got hope in Pope," and we saw it through. I mean, I was 8 months in county, and then I did 8 months in the camp because the total sentence was 24 months, is what I ended up getting. And it was, listen, we had our ups and downs. I have countless phone calls with you on all types of matters over the 3 years that the case dragged on. But I can't thank you enough, Anthony. My wife
Oh,
can't thank you enough. My kids can't thank you enough for everything you did for us.
well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I appreciate the trust that you put in me. I always do. Even after 38 years of practicing law, sometimes people think I'm being silly or it's false humility, but it's not.
Yeah.
When somebody comes and puts their trust in me to represent them, I still take that very seriously and I'm honored by it. So I'm so proud of you. I really am. And I'm so anxious to be part, to whatever extent I can be. I can't vote for you because
Yeah,
I'm
you
not,
can't vote for
I
me,
don't
but
live
you
in
can spread the
Nevada,
word.
but I certainly want to be part of it as best I can. Bobby, it's interesting. I'd like to hear your perspective on the whole idea of, we talked about reform. For
Yep.
instance, there's a topic that is dear to me because I can't understand we're in 2025. We keep hearing about how people should work, get people
Yep.
off welfare lines. They want to cut Medicaid because some are undeserving of it. But we have people that come out of jail on minor matters like yourself, white collar matters, or even if it's a matter of drugs or anything else. But people like yourself, first time offenders, do their time, come out, do the probation successfully, no missteps whatsoever. And it's so hard to get a job.
It
It's so
is.
hard
And
to
you know
get a
what?
job. I don't understand what's going on in Congress.
Well,
There's got to be an expungement process.
there has to be. And you know what? The reason I'm sitting here today is because of everything that I went through, and I opened up my eyes. If I didn't go through what I went through, I'd never run for office. And it was because I sat there and I looked at there's 80 million Americans today with a criminal record. That's 1 in 5 Americans that has a criminal record. And then do you know how hard it is to get a job after prison? I applied everywhere. Domino's, McDonald's, nobody hires you, right? And I'm like, how? Now I'm a guy that was a business owner my entire life. I did millions of dollars worth of business, and I can't get a job. What happens to the other people? And then that leads to the next thing. We have 87% recidivism rate. 87%. That means 87% of the people walking out of prison will end up back in prison. But why is that? It's because there's no opportunities. You know, I was sitting a couple weeks ago, there was an event where the governor was speaking, and there's a CEO of a bank sitting at my table. And she says, we just need to lock all these people that are causing all this crime on the streets. And I said, hold on, let's step back a little bit. These people that are coming on these streets and they're causing this crime, do you know why they're doing it? What's the issue here? I said, hunger is a big factor. These people are released from jail or prison. They can't get jobs anywhere. So eventually they have to feed their kids, and they're going to break into some place, or they're going to sell drugs or whatever. And then they end up back in jail. And it's a vicious cycle. So she said, well, what's your idea? I said, you know what? I'm running for Congress because for the first time in history, we have a convicted felon as president who understands the justice system and understands that it is not fair. And it is not fair for what happens. Now, this man has the access to the nuclear codes, but the average person can't get a normal job. So I said, look, here's an opportunity that nobody's looking at. Everybody wants to talk about reform, but they don't come at it the right way. Unless there's money behind it, no one's going to pay attention because all they say is he's a criminal, when 1 in 5 of us has a criminal record. So I said, look, Trump wants to bring manufacturing back to America. We have millions of people sitting in jail. We have millions of people sitting in prisons. And on top of that, 4.4 million people on probation. These people need jobs. And Trump wants to bring manufacturing to America. But the reality is the average American doesn't want to go work in these factories because it's not good enough for them. So I said, here's what we do. We sit down, we bring all these corporations together and say, look, you want to build stuff in America. Trump wants you to build stuff. We need manufacturing in America because you can't be competitive if you don't have manufacturing. We won World War II because of that. So I said, you go to a company that says, you come here, we give you a tax incentive. You set up shop over here. Now you get to hire prisoners that are currently incarcerated, that are nonviolent offenders, they're not child pedophiles or in there for murder and stuff. And you hire these people. Now what we do is when you hire these people, you don't have to pay health insurance for because they're obviously custody of the state or the feds. You don't have to pay employee taxes on them. You pay them minimum wage. Now these people, instead of sitting in jail or prison and rotting and learning bad things, every morning they get up and they go to these factories, they get trucked there or a bus there. They work. They earn minimum wage. I said, now they got a 5-year sentence. Instead of their families relying on welfare or whatever to support themselves, like my wife, she struggled to pay her bills when I was in custody. They can now actually earn something, send money home to themselves, their families. They're also learning a trade. They're staying occupied. And now they're learning something where when they leave prison, they have something to fall back on. On top of that, if, say, they don't have a family, they work for $15 an hour. That's what minimum wage is in the state or something. And they save their money for 5 years. When they walk out of prison, they have money to get an apartment. They have money to get a car. And they have money to start their life. But the other thing we have to do is if you accomplished everything in prison, you had no problems, you worked hard, you did stuff, and then you walk out of prison, you should get your rights restored at that point where you can now go get an apartment. Because the issue we have is, like when I went out, I couldn't get a bank account. I went to multiple banks and they wouldn't open my bank account. You can't rent a home. You can't get a mortgage. You can't get a business loan. But it's supposed to be about second chances. Because if that's what, we're taught, that, you do your time, do the crime, do the time, and then you start your life again. Right now, it's a scarlet letter you wear for the rest of your life. And there is no second chance. It's a life sentence. Because for the rest of your life, you have to keep putting in you're a convicted felon and you're denied all these opportunities. And then because of that, your family's denied opportunities. You do your time, you get your rights restored, you start your life again, and you can. And I said the recidivism rate's going to go down. People coming out of prison are not going to be out there breaking into things, selling drugs in the corner again, because now they have something to fall back on. Because you know what? They can go to that company and say, I worked for you for 5 years in prison, or I worked for your competitor, and now I want to work at this company. They have talent. They know that they can do the job. It's going to change stuff. And it also brings back manufacturing to our country. It brings back, obviously, jobs, because those factories will employ, felons, and they'll employ non-felons, just normal people off the streets. But that's what you have to do, and that's
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you have a good idea, that's for sure. In the States, in New Jersey, for instance, there's such a thing as expungements.
Yeah,
Now, I think the expungement process is a little too long. It takes a little too long. Sometimes you have to wait 18 months, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the offense.
exactly.
At least New Jersey does have expungement. And an expungement in New Jersey means that it never existed. So at
Yep,
least those people could put down on an application that they've never been arrested or convicted.
yep,
Whereas in the federal system, there is no expungement. It doesn't
not at all.
exist. Okay.
Nope.
As a matter of fact, you could be arrested tomorrow in the federal system, folks. You could be a photograph taken in your fingerprints, and 2 weeks later they dismiss the case because you're the wrong person. You can't expunge that arrest. You
It's
cannot
there.
expunge that from the file. It's still in there, in spite of the fact that somebody could have simply made a mistake. And even with pardons, people don't understand about pardon. Pardon doesn't mean you didn't commit the crime. Pardon simply means you're forgiven for it. Now, clearly, it's if the president's going to pardon you, that's good. You welcome it, but it still isn't washing the crime away and giving you that second chance. In
You should,
essence, a pardon does do it, but still not as completely as I think an expungement would. And
exactly.
I've been arguing that forever because you keep saying to people, you can't go back to jail, you got to be on probation, but they can't get a job. And
They can't get a
what
job.
are they going to do? And so it just is difficult to understand why we're still in 2025 in this position. But I
It's a
will say
vicious
that
cycle.
the federal system is changing. There's a lot of amendments to the federal sentencing guidelines coming up. There's some that have already taken place, the First Chance Act and different things. And I think the president is mindful because my understanding is that he's proposing to let more people out of jail earlier
Yeah,
on certain offenses, which is good. And one of the reasons he says, look, why should the government, why should we still continue to pay for people? Let them go out there and get a job and work.
yeah,
However, Mr. President, one of the things they do need is they need some expungement process.
yeah,
And I,
exactly.
and I hope when you're congressman that you'll put that forward on the floor for expungements because it has been spoken about. It's not the
Yeah,
first time it's come up. It has been spoken, but they really need somebody like you that's been in the system.
been through it. You
Yeah.
know, like he made a good step recently. He appointed a second person in charge of the BOP is a former convicted felon that he ended up pardoning a couple years back.
Oh, is
And
that
he's
right? Yeah.
yeah. So now this guy's number 2 at the BOP at the moment. But like, when I started, when people came to me and said, you should run for office, I blew it off. But then I started talking to people, and I can't tell you how many people come to me. And these are people, Anthony, that look like you. They look like, and they're like, I have this issue. I had this relative of mine that went through this and stuff, and now they're dealing with this. And I'm like, wow. And like I walk in, I did a speech recently. It took me 2 hours to walk out of there because everybody was sharing their story and how it affected them. And
Right.
like all of a sudden, I'm getting people coming to me that never voted Republican, that never like they were Democrats their entire life and said, because what you want to do, I'm willing just for this one purpose alone. I mean, they don't care about the rest of the agenda. They're like, because of this alone, I want to support you because you understand us. And I can't believe.
No, it's great. But you know what the funny thing is the Democrats are always the ones that speak about being liberal, being civic minded, giving people opportunities. But
Yeah,
the reality of it is that most people over the years have spent crazy amounts of time in jail,
yep,
drug offenses and whatnot, because of the Criminal Justice Act that
yep,
was sponsored by Joe Biden and signed off by Bill Clinton.
exactly. And
And
people
the
don't
person
realize that.
that changed it in 2017 was Donald Trump.
Exactly.
He modified that to
Yep,
make it less onerous on people and
yep.
to give people different consideration. And so it is the Republicans that are more looking out for the
But
people
people don't know
that are
that.
in jail or in the street. But well, you know what? They don't know because they don't listen. They don't pay attention because you keep listening to sound bites and these Democrats, they keep on telling you how
Yep.
much they care. But what do they care about? They care
They
about
really don't. Exactly. And then you
your
hear it,
county
you're like,
election.
what do you care about? And then like that led to all types of things. And when I sat down with people in the Republican Party and I said, look, I'm going to do this my way. I'm putting my agenda together. It's a people's agenda. And it's something that, you could be left, you could be right, you could be independent, get behind it. And it's all about, all the wrongs, because like what it did was this whole process opened my eyes to all types of people, veterans, it opened my eyes up to the housing crisis. It opened up my eyes to the economy, the red tape strangling businesses, and said, how can we simplify this? And then it was like justice reform, prison reform. And one thing led to the next. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm running for office then.
One of the biggest problems, Bob, it's an institution. We've created institutions in this country.
Yes, we did.
Whether it's the justice system and the prison system, which is an institution, or the medical profession, or the pharmaceuticals, we have created such large institutions.
And you need to fulfill them.
And you need to fill them, and you need to pay for it. And if you alter them ever so so much, you can wind up with some serious problems.
Yeah.
But we've put ourselves in this position as a people. We really have. So listen, we'll see what President Trump is doing. I know he wants to make all these cuts. He's doing some cuts. There's no doubt that there's a lot of waste, and hopefully we could streamline things. But I think the prison situation and people coming out and being given a second chance is essential. It's essential. We call ourselves compassionate people, but
we're not.
I don't know sometimes.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the people that, the issue is that you have people, all these bodies of government, they interpret everything different. Now, obviously, last year, a ruling came down that, it was the Exxon, the Chevron deference, right? And all of a sudden now you're like, okay, you have to interpret. Like when I was in prison, they kept me for 4 months longer because they didn't know how to interpret the First Step Act. And I'm like, this is what my time is. I'm supposed to be released. Oh, well, we don't know. We don't know. And I ended up spending 4 months longer. And so many people like me end up, and because the bureaucracy gets in the way. And it should be, this is the law of the land. That's how we follow it. And then it would make so many things speedy, but we slow down everything.
Yeah, no, it's no doubt. There's no doubt. Well, anyway, listen, I wanted to bring you on so people could hear your story and see that there is opportunities if you push and you push. But the reality of it is, it's funny, you could run for president in Congress with a prior record, but you can't work at McDonald's.
No, you can't.
Or a hardware store or Walmart or something. So that's the dichotomy about this whole thing.
That has to change because
listen, I'm happy that you could run for Congress because you're entitled to run for Congress.
Yeah.
We have a president that had a conviction in New York City, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, he still had a conviction and he was able to run.
Yeah.
And we got to make that for the average person. And we have to give incentives to the companies, the corporations. And it has to be by law, though. You just can't ask them to be nice.
No. I know they won't do it. But the thing is,
and say, when you're out, you've done your time, you're off paper, no more probation, bang, you're a first offender, your record's clean now.
Yep,
go out there and start no. And if people take advantage of it and they don't use it and they get convicted again, well, you don't get a second chance on that regard.
No, exactly.
I'm not suggesting you keep on letting people do the same thing. But I think the first time with certain offenses, which is not murder, not rape, not child pornography, things of that nature. But the second offense, the first offense, if you've done your time and you come out, you should be given a second opportunity. So
absolutely. And the thing is, you know what? We have such a big number. You can't be competitive with China if 1/5 of your population can't do anything and be productive. That's a big number.
We have in the world, we have 25% of the United States has 25% of the world's prisoners.
Yeah. And we're smaller than China and India and all that stuff.
I mean, it's really crazy, but it looks like there's some movement there. You're an inspiration. So keep preaching it, buddy. And
Listen, Anthony, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you. So I owe that to you. I'm sitting here today instead of in a federal prison for 20 years.
Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Give the best to your family. I love you, brother.
All right. Have a happy 4th.
Thanks. You as well. Let's celebrate it.
I will. I'm in a parade tomorrow.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
Exactly.
Talk to you soon.
I'll call you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. See you soon. Happy 4th of July.
Yep. You guys too. Bye-bye.